So how do you know when your chisels are sharp? It all comes down to one step in your sharpening routine, and it's not shaving your arms. I'd like to show you my method for sharpening that I hope will give you the confidence to stop testing your edges and know that they're sharp. Hello, I'm Mark, and I want to help you do your best work by building the skills and confidence that will ultimately allow you to build any project on your list. You know, when I started sharpening, I thought the only way to test my edges was to try to shave the hair off the backs of my arms. But then I took a class with Christopher Schwarz, and in that class he gave a sharpening demonstration. And what I took from that is the one thing that really told you whether you were going to succeed at sharpening was whether you could raise a burr on the back side of the blade during the honing process. To get a perfectly sharp edge, you need to have two planes intersecting with zero radius. And when you use a chisel, the blade starts to deform at the end and a radius starts to build. Sharpening is about removing enough material to remove that radius. So how do you know when you've removed the radius? When you've raised a burr. So be sure to keep honing until you can feel the burr all the way across the back edge of the blade. And once you've done that, all you need to do is polish the two surfaces on either side of the edge. And that does two things. It strengthens the edge by removing the scratches from the coarser media, which are basically weak spots in your edge. And sometimes it'll either refine the burr or polish it off completely, which makes it easier to do the last step, which is flipping the chisel over and removing the burr from the back side of the blade. And the sharpening media doesn't really matter, just so long as you have a coarser stone for honing, something in the 15 micron or 1,000 grit range, and a finer stone for polishing, which would be somewhere in the 8 to 10,000 grit range or 1 or 2 microns. Now, you don't have to have a honing guide, but I certainly recommend one. They make your sharpening more repeatable and a little more dependable. You don't have to buy an expensive honing guide, but you get what you pay for. The more expensive ones are more reliable, easier to set up, a little more versatile because they might come with accessory jaws. And if you're somebody like me who doesn't really enjoy sharpening, just wants to do it and get back to work, this can take a barrier out of your way and make it easier for you to just go to the stones and get your edges sharp. Now, the angle that you hone at is completely irrelevant. That's a personal choice. Everybody has the angles that they like for certain jobs. I tend to hone all of my bench chisels at about 35 degrees. I say about because I don't know the actual angle. I just know that it's pretty close, and it's almost always the exact same angle because I use a honing guide and I use a setup block. Okay, so now I'll go through the steps in real time so you can see how it's done and how quickly you can get sharp and get back to work. The first thing we got to do is make sure our stones are flat. Okay, we always start by polishing the back of the chisel. And this removes any burr that developed when you were using it at the bench. Narrower chisels, I like to move on the stone back and forth. Wider chisels and plain blades, you can move this way. But I've seen students rock the chisel as they go back and forth and actually start to cut grooves in the back, which takes the chisel out of flat. Next thing we want to do is put it in our honing guide. Set the angle, which is 35 degrees in my case. Get our honing stone out. First pass is always a backwards pull. You don't want to dig into the stone. And I'm going to feel for the burr. And I'm pushing from the back of the chisel towards the edge. You never want to go the other way. And I can feel the burr, and it's all the way across. So this chisel is honed. I'm going to wipe the swarf off the wheel and the bevel of the chisel. I'm not going to mess with the back. I don't want to break that burr off. I'd rather polish it off. Now I'm going to go to the polishing stone. And I'm working my way around to kind of spread the wear and tear on the stone. Flip it over. Give it a look, make sure I haven't got any big scratches there. Looks like there's one little spot that I hadn't quite polished. Okay, that looks good. Pull it out. I'm going to set it on the edge and I'm going to pull it onto the stone from the side so that if the burr breaks off, it doesn't embed in the center of the stone. And a quick polish on the back. Wipe the swarf off again. Oil the chisel down since you just dipped it in water. And now the edge is sharp, and I know it's sharp. I can go back to the bench and I can get to work. Now, after you've done this a half a dozen times, you may start to notice that it's taking longer and longer to hone and polish the edge. And that's because this secondary bevel is starting to get wider. The solution to that is to take the chisel to the grinder and regrind the primary bevel so that you have less material in the way to remove each time you go to the stones. Now, this is something that was really intimidating for me when I first started working with chisels and planes. And I was worried about burning the steel and ruining the temper, or taking a square edge and knocking it out of square. But what someone told me the right way to do it, it was really not that hard, and it became a part of my sharpening ritual. And it's something that to this day really saves me a lot of time when I'm sharpening at the stones. So if you'd like to see my method for doing that, click on this video up here. If you'd like to see a playlist of some other sharpening demos, you can click on the link down here on the bottom. I'll see you in the next video.